welcome you tonight to the 6 o'clock Jackson School Board meeting. And I will ask if anyone has any good news you want to share before we get moving on to all the business we have to attend to.
I can share we had our concert last week. This place was packed. I think must have had over 150 people in here. It's just a reminder of how special those events are, and just like to publicly thank Lauren Leader for the work she does with our kids. Our music program is, I'm just going to say, I'm going to brag, it's amazing. We have 100% of students that participate in chorus. There is kind of an option to opt out, but they started the year and they just decided they forgot about that option. So we have 100% do chorus. We have a huge, a nice band, solid band, and the kids love it. So Lauren does an excellent job with our music program, so we're very lucky to have her.
Fantastic. Okay. Anyone else have anything?
Well, I'm putting mind of the great news about the Nordic skiing for the middle school. And Erin, I wonder if you could share that.
I think I can. I think, Mike, you can correct me, but we're up to about 11 students. And we have students from Jackson Grammar, from the Bartlett School, from Kennett Middle School, and from the Northeast Charter School. So we have 11 kiddos, and we have about 10 races scheduled. And they've been out doing their dry land training in all sorts of weather. So it's literally up and running. So we're super excited for that.
Great.
That's amazing. Congratulations. And congratulations to Mike for, and thanks for putting it together. It's huge to have that and have Jackson be the host of a really amazing program, which I hope they can keep moving forward, because creating a culture of that the skiing community here is something that I think that everybody's really excited. I can't wait for the younger kids to see the older kids and be inspired about the trajectory that they can have. It's great.
And I think also I want to thank the Nordic Association as well. You know, Jackson Ski Touring has been just a wonderful and generous partner for our community all along, as they are. And thank you, Erin, for taking the lead in hosting.
It's fun
for everyone.
I'm really sorry to be the bearer of bad news for this evening, but we lost our road agent, Gary Allen. And I think that Gary, that he was dedicated and a very good servant to this town. I think more importantly than that even is that he was a really good man. And I'm sorry that he's gone. And I'm going to take a moment of silence.
Please.
Respect.
Well, that is very sad news. It is, it's really special to live in a community where we can share that in a business meeting. So, Jerry, thank you. Jerry popped up because to actually tell me, like, hey, don't forget about this. And I actually had not known that news. So, it's a gift to be able to share that. And I echo everything that Jerry said. One other thing I will say is that, in terms of good news, I had the privilege of going with some of our Jackson Grammar School students around to sing to some of our Jackson residents in homes yesterday. And I tried to sit towards the back and not sing too loudly, but it was really lovely to watch our little people sharing music with some of our friends who can't get out and about as easily as they might like to. So thank you for sharing all that good news, because it might seem not important, but really that's why we are doing what we're doing. Okay, so with that, we have a big agenda. The first order of business is to approve some minutes. We have the minutes from our November 18th meeting, and we have a number of committee meetings that need board approval, the minutes from them. So I would look to you all.
Make a motion to approve the minutes from the November 18th meeting.
I'll second that.
Any questions, comments? Okay, all in favor? Okay, that's unanimous. All right, we have the high school policy planning committee meeting. We actually have minutes from that.
Do we need to do a formal motion and second for all of those?
We do, yes. I actually just reread the minutes policy.
Okay.
And Jerry and I just spoke about this. We should either change the policy or we should, we have to approve the committee meeting minutes at each meeting. So that might be something we consider whether to.
I make a motion with the policy committee looks at
Yeah.
whether or not we should do a
Yeah,
different
because-
system. So that we could maybe lump
Yeah.
the approval of minutes.
Yeah, oh, well, even if we do them individually, we could just say,
Okay.
B through E, if folks have read them and are comfortable, you can make a
Great.
motion.
Great, I can make a motion to approve minutes B through E.
Second.
Second. If you're all comfortable with that, and comments? So we have a motion and a second. Did you get that, Melissa?
Yes.
Okay, so all in favor of approving those minutes from the four committees, that's the high school planning committee, the policy committee from 10/29, the budget committee from December 11th, and the facilities committee from December 11th. And thank you to everyone for meeting and moving the business of the people forward. So, okay, so with that, let's go to presentation of school items.
None tonight.
Okay. Hmm? Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, yes, citizen comments. Apologies. I got to put my glasses back on. Let me do that. Yes, Mr. Doherty.
Since Peter Benson isn't here, I'll just repeat what he had said. If it has been the tradition in Jackson, if there are any contracts signed at all, that the public would be having a chance to vote on it.
Thank you.
Since Peter's not here, I'll just repeat it.
You said the pub, can you just repeat the last part? I just didn't hear the last part, that the public would vote on it?
Yes, any contracts that the school board would enter into, it would be, the legislative body would have a chance to act on it.
Thank you. Anyone else? Miss Susan?
Could you guys please turn on your mics and speak into them?
Okay, yes.
They're on. It's-
Yeah, let's hear
Okay.
Okay.
please.
Is that better? How's that? Is
I
that
think
better?
we need to move closer to the mics.
Yeah. Okay, is that better?
That's great.
Okay. I apologize for that. Okay, so let's go on to old business, unless there are any other comments or questions. Okay. All right, old business, we have the planning board capital improvement plan input. I know we had a number of committees meeting and some information tentatively has come out of them. So if anyone would like to speak to that, we would like to hear it.
So we had the facility committee meeting regarding anything to contribute to that from from a facility standpoint. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that we thought that we didn't have anything that was concrete enough to present to the planning board as a long-term improvement, other than what we currently have in there as far as capital improvement plans over the long term, which we haven't addressed as this school board yet as far as what those are. So we don't have anything that the board has necessarily come to a consensus on to add to that. But at our last meeting, Micah, you had mentioned the idea of the school expansion plans, which we do have. They're on our website and have been there. But in 2022, the issue that I have with the current plans that we have is, yes, we have a set of architectural drawings and floor plans for an expansion, but we don't have engineered plans. So we have plans, but we have no idea if those plans are possible, nor have any idea how much those cost. So, Bill, I know you're here to, and Bill, I don't know if Bill wants to contribute to this conversation at all. You're certainly welcome to, but from my perspective anyway. Because we don't have costs associated with those, nor has the board decided to pursue those plans, other than the fact that they're just on our website and available to see, it's my view that that's not appropriate for a capital improvement plan from the board, and that's just my view, and I don't know what to, that's why we're here discussing it, because I don't know.
So I think essentially we were not able to come up with a concrete real number that we could give to the capital improvement plan committee from our committee. I don't know if you all had anything. I know we've had some items that have come up, but we didn't have anything that came out yet.
And again, the
So-
way price is attached to.
And I guess it's just, so in March of 2022, we asked the voters for $250,000 to determine, so we could determine this engineering cost, so we could figure out how much it would cost if it's possible to do. And why I say it is possible to do, because I'm not sure the expansion, some of the parts of the expansion that we want to do is actually possible given its proximity to the stream on the side of the building over here. So we definitely would actually need to have real engineering studies done to determine it's even possible. So from my view, if we don't have, and when the town defeated the $250,000, that school board tabled the plans. And they haven't been brought off of the table for discussion since then. And it's, again, why that's not, in my view, not appropriate to go into a capital improvement plan kind of incomplete. If we wanted it to be there, we'd have to go through a process to get it there, I guess.
Michael?
So that all makes sense to me. Is this Susan, can you hear me, or do I need to get closer?
Closer.
Okay. That all makes sense. And there's a caveat, which is to understand what the capital improvement plan is that the town is doing and making sure that this is not the Jackson Grammar School saying, hey, we're good for the next 10 years, right? And so my fundamental question is, where do we get to weigh in and when? Because we might not have that decision at this point, but that doesn't mean that we don't need anything to happen over the next decade, and we don't want to be out of sync with the town. So how do we prevent and solve for that?
Yeah, so I think I could speak to that because, and first of all, I just want to say thank you to Bill Terry because he's taken the time to meet with me twice, and the onus is really on us at this point because they've essentially put out their hand and their plan to say, please contribute. We would like to hear from you all, and so. One thing I think this can spur is for us to look at ourselves and say, let's really get concrete about what things might look like. And, so for example, I think one of the things that came out of our facilities meeting was we need to look at our roof and what will that really look like? So we don't want to give a fake number to the planning board, but at the same time, now is a good time to work with Aaron for us to say, what does it really look like? Okay, it won't impact this year's budget, but let's get some numbers so that if it's going to impact 2 years or 4 years, let's come back to that. So I think for the moment, what it at least has done for me is, as the chair, is it's now on my radar that we need to get moving on a number of these things to make sure that we're really keeping an eye on it. And for certain, when we do our goal planning next year, that will be a big topic I think we need to address, if not before. And I think as board members, anytime anyone has an idea, and certainly please bring it to us and get it on our agenda so that we can make sure that we're planning and proactive, because I think that's what the idea is, so that we can coordinate with these other movements in town, so we're not creating an undue burden on taxpayers. James, did you want to say something?
Yeah, thank you. Just to point out that the budget committee met as well, and one of the questions that came up was around maintenance planning for the Whitney Center as well. And so it seems to me that our conversation, Jerry's brought up a really important and relevant point about capital investments in potentially changing our physical capabilities, but there's a separate set of conversations that also need to occur, in my opinion, about kind of planned maintenance to upkeep what we currently have. And so the main thrust of my comment is about, I think I'd like to see us do that. I'd like to see us do it if we can in step with the town, and I'd like for our planning to include the Whitney Center.
I'm glad you brought that up because we also had a Whitney Center committee meeting and actually piggybacked on that during the facilities meeting because I think the Whitney Center board, or the Whitney Oversight Committee, thank you. That is a topic that I think is coming up as we're looking at facilities. And that's really, I think, due to Aaron in part, because you're bringing things to folks and saying, hey, let's just keep an eye on this. So one thing that has come out of the Facilities Committee meeting is that we pulled a policy that looks to speak to our relationship, and what we're hoping for is we can go to that kick that to the policy committee, perhaps revise that, but as part of that, look and say, what needs to happen? How do we do that? What are the relationships? How do we make sure that that is part of our proactive planning? So again, thank you to you, Bill, because I think you helped us get a lot of things moving that I think we all wanted to do, but we had a lot of other business that sort of sat by the wayside.
Can you make a comment?
Please, yes.
Yeah, the planning board does not want to get into your business. Okay, let's put that right up front. We don't want to get involved with what you do on a year-to-year basis. The idea of capital improvement program is to give a sense for what kind of dollars might be required over really the period that we're looking at is a 6 to 10 year period, in trying to figure out, okay, the town's going to spend X amount of dollars, they've got certain things they want to do, and they're going to get paid for either by trying to budget for them in a particular year, or bonding possibly if it's a large enough item, reserving, which we know is being done for things like fire trucks and police cruisers and that sort of thing. Those are all part, except for the part that's done year to year, where you consider it part of your maintenance process and part of your regular ongoing budget. That's one thing. If it's outside of that, if it's something that's going to be a bump in the tax rate because you want to do something special, you know, special kinds of things could be major maintenance on a building. You have to put like in Conway, a $3 million roof on a building. That's a big item. It's not something you just absorb and say, oh yeah, we'll put that in line number 42 and we'll pay for that. And it's de minimis. It's not a problem. There are going to be certain things that you want to do. I don't know, maybe you want to put solar panels on the roof here. Those would cost money outside of a regular budget. That's a capital improvement. It's a true capital improvement. It's going to be outside your budget, and it might be worthwhile doing over a 10-year period and budgeting it and paying for it over a 10-year period. You might want to reserve for doing it. You might want to, there are all kinds of ways of working that out. So the capital improvement program is really to say, what are those kinds of expenses? We're asking the town to do that, but the planning board, in looking at capital improvement program, is charged with asking the school board the same questions. What kinds of things you got planned? You're going to replace the building entirely. I don't know, maybe you're going to do that. It's 100 and something odd years old, right? No? I don't know.
Thank you.
You guys are going to do what you're going to do, but if you're going to do it, it's useful to know what the impact is so that everyone can think about what the tax impact is going to be and whether or not we can afford it. What happened in 2022 was we had two folks coming at it at the same time without talking to one another. And the taxpayers responded appropriately and said, you guys got to be kidding me, and rejected both. So it's just a matter of making sure that if we understand because we have expenses. No question around that. We have expenses, schools cost money, you do need to repair your building, you do have to have a facility that's good for teaching. No one's questioning that. But if there's a cost associated with it that's not going to be in your regular year-to-year budget, that's a capital improvement.
Great.
And you need to know what it is. And if you could tell us what that would be, we can put it on the schedule. We can look at it and say, okay, we've got some conflicts here that need to be addressed. Or we realize that the asks that you have and the asks that the town have exceed the willingness of the taxpayer to accept. And those are the concepts that we're working with the capital improvement
You have a
program.
question?
to you.
Yes.
Thank you, Phil,
Yeah.
that's really helpful. I think what's important to me
Yeah.
is that we're aware that this is kind of an evergreen option to add to, right? It's not, if we don't get them in by January 1st, then there's not an option.
It's a living document.
Exactly, so that's very helpful to put forth. And I think per what you were saying, Jess, that for next year, to really look in our planning to come back to, let's look at this piece that, you know, we brought forward. Is that something we want to do? Do we want to say, we would like to go get that spec so that we can really know that, is that the move? Because per what Bill said and per what we all know, this is not a static entity. There's going to need to be other improvements made. So thank you for clarifying that this is not our one and done opportunity.
Right, and I just want to sort of close this out with the idea that to be good citizens to them, we have an obligation to start to participate with them because they will include us, but it's not just about what our needs are. And so part of it is this hopefully will spur us to be proactive in a number of respects. And I think we've got some action items we'll take going forward to start moving those conversations forward. Yeah.
Bill, I appreciate the humility with which you came to us, started that off with, but I think I speak for all of us when I say, anytime that we can engage like this, the community is going to benefit. So I thank you for it. Beyond that, we do have capital improvement plans that this board hasn't looked at, but they're there. For instance, 3 boards ago, we had capital improvement plans for replacing this roof, the school roof, out through 2027. We just haven't looked at it in a while. So having this kind of engagement, it's good because it's like, we should check in on that, see where we're at with it. Maybe it's not relevant at all anymore because the numbers aren't even close to what they need to be. We don't know. So I just think it's a good thing overall.
Yeah, and that's actually a reminder. I didn't know we had a capital improvement plan that we should go back to, so let's put that on a list of things to get moving on.
Well, when I was looking through all the information I came across that, I haven't put it all together yet to send it to her, but I still will.
All right, but we'll add that to our list. Okay, all right. Is everyone comfortable if we move on? Yeah, okay, great. Thank you again, Bill. Much appreciated. Okay, so next up we have our board self-evaluation. I just want to make sure we have so many other things to do. I just brought paper copies. I also brought an envelope and a stamp, and I will self-address it. So if folks want to take it and send it to me as a New Year's letter, I will accept it. So we have it for next month, and I can do that by the end of the meeting. So we can keep that moving forward. Is that fair? Wonderful. Okay, great. And then we can move on to number 6, which is our instructional issues. Consider the first reading of policies, which we postponed from November 18th because of time. So we have a number of policies. So the policy committee have looked at these, and they are recommended to approve on the first reading. So does anyone want to make a motion?
Is the motion to approve on first reading?
That was what was recommended in our packet.
I'll make a motion to approve on first reading policies A through F, assuming under A.
Well, we have 2 deletions, so, yeah.
I'm looking at it from the.
Yeah, B and F were, the recommendation was to delete 2, so approve A, delete B, approve C.
Oh, okay, yeah, no, I couldn't see that from there. Actually, I can see it better there, I'm sorry. Why don't we do them individually? That'll be easier. So I'll make a motion to approve policy JECC.
Second.
Admission of non-resident students.
Mike seconded that. Is there any comment or questions? All right, all in favor of that? Okay. Melinda, are you in favor?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Okay,
I do have a comment.
yes?
I think it's a great policy,
Okay,
and I appreciate that the board took action to change the policy, and I hope it makes our school an even more welcoming place for all of our employees.
all right. Okay, B. I make a motion to approve, or to delete policy B. Second. Any comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So if we delete B, we are replacing it with C?
Essentially,
Okay.
so.
I didn't read the whole deleted thing, I just read the replacing thing.
Yeah, so essentially, I'll make the motion to delete B and replace it with C.
Second.
Okay. And all in favor? Okay? And then we can move on to D, which is,
So do you, that went down?
I got it.
I can make a motion to approve JLF, reporting child abuse and neglect.
okay, I'll second that. Any comments or questions? Okay, all in favor of that? Okay, that's unanimous as well, Melissa. And then,
I can make a motion to approve JFAA dash admission and continued enrollment of resident students.
okay,
Second that.
comments, questions? All in favor? That's unanimous.
And Jessica, the reason I asked Melissa is because we had a motion on the floor that we didn't vote on.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that. I thought we did. vote.
Yeah, and that's why I didn't,
Yeah.
I didn't know if you got that part, Melissa.
I pretty much got that she went back and added C to it,
Yeah.
so it would be in C together.
So just ignore the first motion that was made.
Yeah.
Thank you, Jerry.
And I can make a motion to delete JVA.
I'll second that.
Comments, questions? All in favor? Okay, that's unanimous as well. Thank you. All right, consider second reading of policies. We have policy JLCF on wellness.
So, Jess,
Mhm.
I did go back
Oh,
through,
great.
and you had asked a question about why did we send it back. We knew at the time that,
Could you just hold 1 second? Let's get a motion first, and we'll discuss it. No problem. Yeah. so
I'll make a motion to approve.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, so.
And can you grab the mic, Pam, just so
Yep,
everybody?
I can.
That'd be great.
And who seconded?
James.
I did.
Great.
Okay.
Yeah, so
Thank you.
Jess and I were trying to remember why this dropped off of the agenda last January, or last February. And in looking back at it, we knew that there were going to be changes in the administration at ESAU office. So throughout the document, it talks about Director of Administrative Services. And the recommendation was to make the change to superintendent or superintendent designate.
Oh, right.
So if you wanted, you could make a motion to amend it to reflect that, or you could send it back again to the policy committee to clean that up. But that's what the issue was.
Okay.
Are we talking about the wellness policy?
Yes.
I was just curious why there's nothing about emotional health in there, or mental health, or, you know, all this stuff with screens, and there's just no mention of anything. I know our kids are young, but
That's an excellent question. My recollection when the policy committee was reviewing this was that they were reviewing the recommended policy from the board, the school board association. We do have an SEL committee here on site, and then also you have an SEL committee here.
That works within our wellness committee.
Great. Great. So those issues are being addressed, but it isn't in the policy.
correct.
Is there another place where it is? And if it isn't, then should the wellness policy include should we be making a change and actually saying, can we have a third round? I'm just pointing out, I think Linda makes a great point, that if we're, like, we can either assume that it's being addressed somewhere else, that doesn't seem like a great plan. So if I don't know that it's being addressed somewhere else, then let's step in and say, do we need to add to this to update it to the current times where we're going to focus on our children's mental health from, regardless of the age.
I think this is really an excellent conversation, and I thank you for bringing that up. And as a matter of expediency, I wonder if we could ask the policy committee to take another look at the policy, make the changes that Pam recommended, but also either bring, to your point, bring an explanation back to the board about where mental health wellness is addressed, if it's addressed elsewhere, or else come back to us with a recommendation of a policy that does address mental health.
That sounds good to me.
So I think we would remove the motion to accept it, and I can offer a motion to send it back to the policy committee.
Second.
Yeah, so go ahead and draw it, yeah.
Who made the motion?
Yeah, so Melissa,
Made the motion.
I withdraw the motion.
yeah, thank you.
And I'll make a motion to send the policy back to the policy committee to look at it again with the recommended considerations.
Perfect, yes.
I'll second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, all in favor of that?
Yes.
All in favor of that? Okay. So we're just voting on that last motion, okay.
Oh, yeah.
So Melissa, that was a full unanimous vote to send that out. All right. Everyone keeping up? We're fast and furious, okay.
I'm good.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so we're moving on to consider personnel actions. Consider the approval of ESOL tutor position as contracted agreement position.
I make a motion to approve the ESLO tutor position as a contracted agreement position and to celebrate that we have such a dedicated, wonderful teammate who's really striving for their education, supporting our students. So, heck yeah.
We'll second that. Maybe just get the first part of that.
Right, I'm trying to bring a moment of like, this is great, this is my good news.
It is good news. We have to celebrate the good news. I'm seconding all of it.
all right, thank you.
Yes. Okay, any discussion on that? Okay. All in favor enthusiastically? Okay. All right, let's turn to business affairs. FYI 2024-2025 budget status report.
So if I may.
Please.
There was a request from the board, from the budget committee, that we point out highs and lows. We did have a discussion about that being the responsibility of board members, but in the effort to collaborate, I just wanted to point out that there aren't any significant changes from the last time you were all able to review the current budget status, and if there are questions, I will attempt to answer them, remembering that I'm the Director of Student Services and not the Business Administrator. If anyone had specific questions.
Yeah, so the comment and the question that Pam is referring to came from an observation that on a month-to-month basis, we have been running an overage of about $30,000 a month that has compounded each month. So now the overage, I haven't looked at this line yet, but it probably stands at about $120,000 against a budgeted amount of $0. And so the budget committee felt like it was in the best interests of the board and the community to use this time that we've set aside in our meetings for a budget update to be updated by the SAU about any major variances in the budget. So we've asked Pam to kind of explain that area of the budget to the community a little bit better, and so I look forward to us being educated about it tonight.
So it's a special education line, and since you have such a small such a small number of students here,
I think you have to pull the mic closer.
Sorry, I didn't anticipate that, James. So because you have such a small population of students and small population of students who receive special education services, that's what this is specific to, it's not special services, I can tell you that we're making decisions based on individual student needs, and I can't get into anything further than that because it could breach confidentiality.
And there's going to be a presentation later today on special
Yep,
education.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the history of special education and variability in our budgeting.
Okay.
So I think as a board, we need to discuss or figure out how we can talk about the budget in a safe way that protects confidentiality, but at the same time allows us to be transparent. And I think we need to do better at that. And I don't have an answer, but I want to throw that to you all because I think it's, something as we prepared for tonight, and I think I'm finding myself here again where as I'm thinking about this, I don't know if we need to come up with a sort of a dashboard or something simple. It's got to be something simple that we can look at each month that has like key variances or potential shortfalls and overages, cash flow, and fund balance updates, or emerging issues, or future financial pressures. I don't know. I was trying to brainstorm today as I was preparing for tonight's meeting. Like, what do we need to see as a board each month that's not tied to an individual, but will allow us to do the due diligence and be fiscally responsible so that we know, we really have an understanding of how is the money being spent and are we doing it in a way that is sensible, right? I mean, we just had a boiler, and what did we do? What did you have to do? You had to get a couple of, could you tell us the process just real quick to get the boiler? What happened?
Well, because it was under a certain amount of money, I believe it's under $20,000, it does not need to go out to bid.
Okay.
Per policy.
So, but over $20,000 it goes out to bid, and how much, so, and then how many bids generally? It's about 3, right?
It's 3.
We try to get, if we can, right? And so part of it is, I'm not suggesting we get a bid on everything that happens in the district. We want to let you all do the day-to-day business, but I just want to throw this out to the board as a concern, because I think we just need to find a better way to do monthly business so that we're not combing through all of the, I mean, I think we do have to comb through these, but what I'm worried about is we can't ask questions we don't know to ask. So how do we make sure that we're doing what we need to do? And do people feel like they're doing it? Mike?
Does that template exist for other schools where so that we're not creating it? I agree. I mean, that's how I work with the business that I run in terms of how we look at budgets and how we do that high level for the board. Is that already implemented for other schools in SAU?
It's here.
I know it's there.
No. So if you go through, like, you can see the lines, and
Totally.
This is a document for you. So there is a line, if I may, just answer your question. There is a line, the total special education line, the 1,200 lines are over expended by 57.11% at this point in time. And that's due to student needs based on IEPs.
I understand that it's here. I think what I was trying to refer to is Jess's idea of an overview, a top sheet that says, here are the 5 things that we're looking at. So, and whether or not that's something that other boards are using. And so in that case, I think it's a great idea, Jess. I think it's just about personnel, right? Who does that?
Yeah. And if it's a board, is it something we do?
Yeah.
Or how does that work?
In advance of a board meeting, etc. So,
I think Jerry wanted to say something.
Yeah, just process-wise, I think we've always done a pretty good job of, it's always on every agenda, the FYI budget status report. And that's the opportunity to do exactly what we do. And I thought it was the school board, but maybe it was last year's school board, where we had the conversation about going over on special education costs, and that we knew that we could pull that from other areas of the budget that we weren't going to spend from, so that we didn't need to tap into the special education capital reserve fund for it. I apologize, it wasn't this board, it was last year's board, but I know we've had that conversation at one point along the way, to be aware of what was going on. So to me, the process is working pretty well the way it is.
You know, I think, actually, to go back to an earlier comment, one thing that worked well was with the previous superintendent. We actually would get commentary each meeting about, so it was a verbal update, right? And that's not happening, which it did not occur to me until just this meeting. So it's a custom that has changed. So that, I think, is playing a role, because generally I think it did function, and I don't know if I was a part of all of that conversation, but really all I'm looking for is an understanding of, if there's a highlight, I would certainly like someone who knows more about the day-to-day and who can see it coming faster than I can to alert me to it, because while I do my very best to read everything as much as I can, I am not an expert in this, and I can't see the patterns as well as the people who are doing it day to day. So I would just like to find a way to get assistance with that, if that makes sense.
It's extremely difficult to read how we receive it electronically. It's like sideways, and I can't really read it very well. So, if there was a way to receive it in a more readable fashion, that would be great.
Would it make sense to send it to the budget committee to see if there's a way to improve it? Or, James, did you want to say something?
Well, I guess, frankly, I'm a little bit perplexed. I agree. I remember a time when this part, not so long ago, when this part of the meeting was used by Kevin to make updates so that the board could be, and the community could be well informed in terms of planning. The other thing that perplexes me about the necessity of having this conversation is that it seems to me that this board and this community and the SAU are all aligned in our goals of being able to have the information that we need in order to meet the needs of every student, no matter what. And so it seems to me that, and then the third thing that sort of perplexes me is that, as Pam pointed out, all of this information is publicly available. It's been shared in the board packets. So it seems to me that to the extent that there's a lack of alignment in terms of how to use this budget update part of the meetings, the lack of alignment seems to come from the idea that the information is there, but we're just not going to talk about it in the meetings, or we're only going to talk about it if we're asked about it. And I don't think that that necessarily serves the community or the school board ideally. I think that the school board and the community is best served by working hand in glove with the SAU to learn about information in real time so that we can all be working together to serve our students.
Jess?
I wanted to just turn to
Yes,
Steve.
if I
Is that
may.
accurate?
So,
Yeah.
special ed's a different nut to crack in this. Again, because you have so few students, your percentage is very low. So there is confidentiality that we have to be very aware of. My intent today was to point out that there was the question that there is this 57.11% that's higher. It's based on individual student needs, and that's as much as we can discuss. My recollection of past superintendent sharing issues would be when issues had arisen. So James, when you pointed that out at the board meeting, at the budget committee meeting, that's why I brought it up, that we didn't point it out. And we heard that, and we will, but when there are things that are confidential around special ed, we won't be able to discuss as much as if it was a boiler that we needed to go out to bid or not go out to bid on, so.
Yes.
So I want to separate two issues, because I actually think they're two separate issues. I think one is, heard Pam, I don't think anyone's asking for confidential information. So I think that my guess is that us as a board, we understand that and we are comfortable with that. What this has brought up is that we have a limited amount of information. Let me do a take two on that. We don't have a distilled information set, and we really are acknowledging how much we appreciate that from Kevin. So can the SAU do that? Can the new superintendent do that, where they come in and say, hey, here's the high level? Because we're saying it's really important. If the SAU is saying, hard no, we're not going to be available to do that, then do we as a board want to undertake that so that we can talk about some highs and lows, not only for ourselves, but also for the public? So I just want to tease this special education situation out from what we're asking about from the budget, so that we can talk about those things separately. So my first question is, can the SAU do that? Because it was really helpful. It would be good if they could do that again. And you might not know. I understand you're just sitting in that chair.
I know, because I
Okay.
read this and I can highlight the highs and lows.
Yeah.
I mean, anyone can.
I understand, but could that be something that we could ask for?
Yeah, I can't speak for Dr. Frechette.
Yeah.
But I can say, I mean, that's reasonable. If there's an extreme level, that would be a conversation I would anticipate your board chair would have with the superintendent to say when it rises to this level.
Yeah. So that, to me, that sounds like that would be very helpful. If we can rely on the SAU to come to us and we can agree on a threshold when it's, greater than X% variance, that we want it to be talked about to, in public, so that we can be alert to it and the public can be alert.
So why don't we start with us? I'll start with Amy. And
Great.
then we'll come back.
Great.
Does that work? Jared?
Yeah, I just want to say, I think, James, you framed it really well, and Mike, you did too, but I think Pam responded well, which is that they can do that. I think that because Amy hasn't been doing it the way that Kevin did, we're in new territory, and it's just a communication issue.
Yeah,
And I think we've resolved that communication
Yeah.
issue tonight. I think it is in a pretty good way.
Great. Okay. Anything else on the budget status report? Okay, do you want to speak about the schedule? Do you have James?
Ever,
And Melinda?
well, James and Melinda can Whatever, do you guys want to talk to the budget?
Yes,
Sure.
Okay, great.
Would you like to?
go right ahead.
Okay. The Budget Committee met together a couple of times since our last board meeting and did some really good work, I think, around planning for next year's budget. We are going to have some additional need in one line in particular next year that the community will note. I think it's a very important need for the community to fill, and we've asked Pam to kind of explain a little bit about that process by which the community incurred this cost. But we also talked a lot in the Budget Committee about our goal of sort of smoothing the ups and downs in the future in terms of needs that may come up. We do have a capital reserve fund that we can use for kind of big bumps. And so you'll see that our recommendation is that we kind of add more to that reserve fund than we have in the past, so that we can be prepared and have be able to present to the town a budget that's a little bit more consistent than it'll be from last year to this year. And in terms of kind of the other aspects of the budget, Erin sat with us and she did some, I think, some really thoughtful and generous belt tightening work. We're trying to thread the needle of both being sensitive to the town, of seeing a budget that involves some increase in spending, but Erin was also really generous in kind of trying to think about areas where in the operations budget she could still take good care of the kids, take good care of her staff, but also, sort of set aside some other needs until later on. And so, Erin, I want to thank you for that.
Okay, anything else?
No, but I think Pam is going to give us a presentation about the ups and downs of special ed.
Yeah, I think that later, somehow later on.
Yes.
Yeah, this is later on.
It's part of the committee.
The committee, yeah. Okay, weirdly, is it?
It's moved right further down the agenda under committee reports.
Yeah,
Okay.
so, okay.
It might make more sense to move it up since this is what we're talking about.
It's up to you all, if you prefer to do that, that's fine, I don't mind moving it.
Yeah, would you be willing to?
Yeah, that's fine, yeah.
Are there any specific questions right now about the draft proposed budget?
No.
Okay. So, you want to do that and then? Do you guys, so I've got, I could really geek out on this, so I apologize.
Microphone, please.
Sorry, I'll stand up, how's that? I'll stand up next to it, oh, that's fine, so, this is great, this is not my thing. So, okay, so the special education, can I change it? Oh, that's nice, thank you. So the special ed budget development, my hope is that, and I'm told I have 10 minutes, so someone's going to time me and kick me, right? Because I could talk about this forever. So by the end of this presentation, I hope that you all gain an understanding of the special ed budget development process, okay? For me, I do it all the time, I live it, so I talk really fast because it's just what I live, so if I'm going too fast, someone just say, hey, slow down. So I wanted to start with the history of special education in public schools. James pointed out, as right towards the end, I was like, yeah, since 1975, and I'm just like, oh, this would have been so great. So bear with me, I only have 2 quick slides on this, okay? So if you go back to the foundations of equal access to education, okay? So Brown versus the Board of Education, that's when our taxpayers, our government said, hey, everybody should have access to school. And that was in the 50s, that was in 54. In 65, we had the Elementary and Secondary Education Act with an amendment. In 66, they created the Bureau of Education for those who are handicapped. I want to remind you, when you hear this and hear that language, that's because but prior to 1970, most of our students and children who were born with any kind of disability, families were encouraged to institutionalize them because they wouldn't be able to learn, was the thought. The word handicap does change later on in career. And then in 1970, there was the Education of the Handicapped Act. So it started to become very clear through desegregating our schools that parents of disabled children and their advocates started saying, well, wait a minute, all children should be able to learn together, not just those of different races, right? So that's kind of the history of how we got here. So then in 1972, there were 2 court cases, and I won't get into that because then we would be here all night. But they highlighted the inequity of children who have disabilities having access to public education. Out of that, in 1975, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act passed. You'll hear me when I talk about the IDEA. That's what this is. And that guaranteed access to free and appropriate public education for all students, including students with educational disabilities. And it mandated the integration of those children, and public schools that received any federal funding had to abide by IDEA. It said that as well. So it's a have to. Okay, that was fast, but I can keep going? Yeah. Awesome. Okay, so special ed budget development. So what do? So I sit down, I don't know why that dropped out, but anyway, Sarah will fix it for me. So I sit down with my team. Sarah Neugebauer is here. She's our out-of-district coordinator and also our court liaison. So we work really closely together with the case managers at all of our schools and with the principals. We identify specific students. Every student who is on what's called an individual education plan who receives special education services, their name goes onto a spreadsheet based on which district they live in. That helps us to build your budget for the year. We put the child's name on there, and then we identify all of the services they get and how much those services cost. We determine the most fiscally responsible way to provide that, whether it be through staffing or contracted services. And then we anticipate usually a percentage increase over the years. Most recently, we've used about a 2.5% to 3% increase. This year, some of our out-of-district placements, I'm predicting a 5% increase. We never know what it's going to be until the school year starts July 1st. So this is not to drive you crazy, but this is just an overview of what that original spreadsheet looks like. This is actually a different district, and I think I pulled like the 2020 because I can't show you yours because there would be identifying information just by, you might know kids who get X, Y, and Z, and then you'd say, I know who that kid is. So I took out the names, I just picked preschool, and you'll see at the top we've got a consultant line, paraprofessionals, and then all of the numbered lines that tell us the function code and what we're paying for. So if it's tuition, I know for special ed that it's going to be $1,200,560 line. You'll never need to know that, but when you see some things on our spreadsheet sometimes when we give it to you for budgeting, that's how we identify it, and it falls into everything we have to report to the State Department of Education as well as the Federal Special Ed Department of Education. We tally everything up across by student, and then we also tally up individual lines. I take like this, this is the 560 is tuition. So this year in this district, just for early childhood age students, there was $202,000 in tuition alone for those students. We don't have a public preschool. That's a whole other presentation, but Jess and I will do that next year for you. It's a little overwhelming, but I wanted you to see, like, we're not just saying, oh, it's going to be about $200,000 this year. We really are making decisions based on students. So I wanted to give you guys give an overview of historically how our budget has grown and looked. So this is Jackson's budget from 2011 through 2024. This is fiscal year, so it's the 2010-2011 school year. Sorry about that. The second half of the year is what identifies our fiscal year. So you'll see that feel like I'm in people's way, so I'm gonna be in your way. You'll see that in 2011, we started at $450,000. We had $450,000 worth. And the percentage didn't show up, that's so weird. And then it kind of levels out after 2014. We suddenly go from $250,000, we go down a little bit for a couple of years, and then we're at $58,000. So that might mean that students moved. It might mean that they aged out. Students can receive special services till age 22, or it may mean that they were discharged from special services or that they graduated. We have those 4 pieces.
Can you explain the difference between actual expenses and actual revenue? Because the revenue line, I don't exactly understand.
This is a working document, okay? That's a really good question. So I'm gonna put in here what we originally budgeted for you, so that you can see we budgeted this, but we only spent this, or we budgeted this and we overspent, okay? And then we have revenue lines. So you may have received revenue from IDEA funds, and I'll show you that on my next slide. You may have received revenue from Medicaid to schools. We can get some Medicaid to schools payment back on Medicaid eligible services. School Medicaid eligible services, that would be another presentation, okay? So right now, last year, our budget was 183, that we spent 183,000. And you can see how we've gone up and down. I was frustrated because the percentages aren't here, so you'll have to trust me that there are a couple of percentages in here that are just like 11%, and some that this one was 20% and change, the one from last year, and it doesn't correlate. These guys saw it. I have a couple handouts.
So the percentage is the percentage of kids on IEP.
Right, and it doesn't correlate. Like if your percentage goes up, that doesn't mean that your cost goes up.
Correct.
Okay, and I'll give the school board, I made a few copies of this, and I think the one I copied has the percentages so you can see it. And I'll make sure we get the right one out to you guys. Yeah.
I'll ask it then.
Okay. So then I took the IDEA, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So this is the funding you've received. Let me go back. I did want to show you that here, 2019 is blank. We had a significant change. Becky Jefferson left after over 40 years as our business administrator, and someone came in and was only with us for, it was like less than a month, I think. It was not good. So we're still trying to get those like solid numbers. I just didn't trust what I had. So I'm not going to give you something that I don't feel confident is real, even if it's in your annual report. I'm just not sure what happened that year. So that's why that one's blank. So then I'll shift over to the IDEA grant. All of this information came out of the state grants management system. So you'll see that 2011 is blank because for some reason in the state grants management system, they never populated IDEA in 2011. I have no idea why, because we have to put our grants in there, and that's how we document expense of funds and then get revenues back. So typically you started out pretty low, like in the in 2012 you only had a total of $2,900, but typically we're banking on about $13,000 to $15,000 a year that we get from IDEA. We can't spend it on something that we knew about. That would be supplanting. So some years we have a very difficult time expending these funds because we budget so well, because we know our kids. So when there is an unanticipated expense, then we can tap in and use this. And this budget, each IDEA year we get 18 months to spend it. So when Jerry was talking about a few years ago, we had a significant increase in cost to special ed services that we hadn't budgeted for because we didn't know about them. So we said, we're going to try to spend everything down, and if we can't, we're going to come back to you and tell you we need to tap into the trust fund. We were able to spend all of our lines down, and we were able to expend our IDEA grant on those specific needs. That's why I bring Sarah with me. Okay, services and placement cost range, I didn't put that in here, this can like go off. Our range though, I do have, yeah, I'm done with that, thanks. So our services can cost anywhere from, I think this is when we all started kind of glazing over the other day when I was meeting with James and Melinda. But our services can cost anywhere from $74 an hour for a speech service to $300 an hour for a school psychologist. So there's a lot of negotiating, there's a lot of contract development, there is a lot of vetting of vendors. Because we have such a small population here, we have to get creative. You know, we want to make it worth their while to come and work with us, not just a 2 or 3 hour piece. So some of you will remember last year that Erin proposed that we have an early intervention program set up for our K and 1 students, and that was able to, K through 2, sorry, that gave us the opportunity to increase the amount of hours that our occupational therapist and speech pathologists who are contracted vendors could work with us. So it was much more appealing. It also, you know, because they had more hours, additionally, they were doing some proactive work and really identifying kids. And that's what our clinicians want to do. We have great people who work with us, both employees and contracted services. Then when you look at our cost for out-of-district placement, a day placement could cost $221 to $368 a day. Our residential placements can cost, we have one right now in a different district that is over $1,000 a day, one that's over $800 a day, and the State Department of Education sets those rates. So we only send students to approved placements, and once they're approved by the state sets the rates. I have no negotiation skill there. Yeah.
Can I just point of clarification question? When you're talking about out-of-district placements, you're talking about providing education for students in another location because we can't meet the needs in our setting. Is that correct?
That's correct. And what's interesting is here in SAU 9, in all of our districts except for Bartlett, all of our preschool age students are identified as being in an out-of-district placement because we don't have public preschool.
Okay.
Okay? And right now, we don't know of any preschool age students that would be enrolled in any of our programs. So that was changed from when we looked at early childhood programming a few years ago. We had more students. I imagine those kids are in kindergarten, first grade right now, right? So it's something we pay attention to, the number of students you'll have. So when you look at those numbers and like those tuition lines that you'll see, that's not just school age students, that's also preschool age students. Okay. I did want to tell you I do have the percentages. So can you just get back to that one slide, the special, and then I'll stop and promise.
Pam, you didn't mention residential placement.
Yes, I did. So, so the one that was over $1,000 a day is one of our residential placements, and the one that's over $800 a day is a residential placement, right?
What was the 221 to 368?
That was like a clinical, that was a day placement.
Day placement.
Those were a couple different day placements. And I can share this with the board. Right, so if you look at, 2024 last year, we were 183 and change. We were 26.30% students with special education needs. If you look at the 2011, we had 8% students identified in special ed, and we actually expended almost $250,000. It's a big difference, yeah.
I wonder how, I know last summer when we spoke, that hiring has been a real challenge, and you were mentioning you were like 50% of the staff that you needed in special ed in the district. And so when we look at the actual expense,
are some of these also down because you're not filling those positions? Like now there are openings.
That's a really good question. So last year, the 50% you and I were talking about, that was for paraprofessionals, just to clarify. For here, your special ed team is staffed. You are staffed. You have a special educator, you have 2 paraprofessionals that actually aren't considered special educators, right? Are they paid out of 1,100 or 1,200? Instructional aides. So you have a special ed teacher here for a reasonable number of students to be case managing. It wouldn't make sense for your clinical team, your occupational therapist, your school psychologist, your speech pathologist to be full-time employees. It would cost you even more money than the contracted services that we have now. You're looking like you don't agree, so I'm happy to answer other questions.
Well, I just, I know that not all of the Jackson School District students have the number of special ed services professionals employed to meet the needs. There are openings that aren't filled.
So you and I should have a conversation, because that is not what I know. So you and I should have a conversation, but it feels like it should probably be in private, because I'm not sure where you're going or what you're talking about. So if I could request that either she speak to you and then you speak with me, or you and Yenna and I speak together. I think that would be really important.
I think it would be good to turn back to continue on.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Pam. And so just to bring the public back to the budget piece, I think it's really important to understand where the budget comes from and the work that's done to get there. And at the end of the day, how important these students are to take care of. And I think the community has done a great job of doing that. And I want us to continue to do that as long as into the future. I want to call everybody's attention in your packet on page 61. The big variance that you're going to see in the budget in the upcoming year is on line 111. And Pam, do you have an update on, so the total that you'll see in the packet was $613,000 on the special ed line. Pam, do you have an updated total? I believe we talked about that might not reflect the most recent information.
That didn't get into the budget because we're still working on it, so that may shift down a bit.
Okay. So, so that's good news that the number that you're looking at tonight is probably the highest number that you're likely to see in that line. But I want to kind of point out a couple of important take-homes that I understood from Pam's presentation. One is, again, just going back to the important need that's being filled in this particular part of the budget. But the other one is sometimes we think about budgets in terms of the total in the budget being the same or kind of increasing gradually over the years. And I think it's important that the data that Pam showed us is that that's not the case for this particular part of the budget. And so we're going to work hard with the community to meet this need. But I don't think that the community has to make an assumption that this area of the budget is going to remain at this level of spending indefinitely. And so we're going to also try to prepare and work ahead so that we have some increased elasticity in our savings and in our money to spend as needs come up. But this is one of those parts of the budget that sometimes it's a little higher, sometimes it's a little lower, but it was really impossible as we look back to kind of understand any kind of a consistent trend. And so really, as a community, the decisions that we have to make are about the immediate need and the immediate budget, and we don't have to concern ourselves too much with projecting 20 years into the future.
Thank you. And Pam, thank you very much for taking the time and effort to do that so that we can all understand what's happening. In terms of action items and moving forward, we have this review draft number 1 of both the proposed budget and warrant articles. One of the things we talked about, Pam and I briefly spoke about, was the potential for us to come back to that in January with updated numbers. Are you all on board with that?
Yes.
Okay, great, so that we can have updated numbers and more accurate projections from you all. So, okay, excellent. Okay, so we have item D, declare equipment surplus.
Sorry,
Oh,
the
yes.
warrant articles? Can you talk about that?
Oh, sure, yes, I thought that we were talking about both of those. Oh, yeah, okay, so then we'll go back. So review draft 1 of the proposed warrant articles. Would one of you all like to run us through those, or do you want me to do that? We have the first look at our proposed warrant article, and I believe the budget committee came up with those numbers. So while you all are pulling it up, it's page 69, from our packet 8C.
James, if you want me to, I've got it open, I can do it.
No, I'm happy to do it. I'm just trying to get there. But basically, so thank you. On page 69, you'll see Article 1, appropriating the budget. We haven't filled in the end number. We're still working on that. Article 2, traditionally we raise a smaller sum for the capital reserve fund. The budget committee wants to recommend to the board and to the community that we increase that number. And the idea of that would be that we would just have a bigger piggy bank for moments like this where we have a need that, the other thing that's important to mention about this process is that it's actually not lawful to project this aspect of the budget into the future. You can only budget for expenses once a placement has been made. And so by definition, this part of the budget is a little unpredictable. And so the budget committee felt like it was really prudent to the town to try to prepare ahead of time so that as numbers move around a little bit, that the school has a larger piggy bank to draw from. And so that's why appropriating the capital reserve fund, the number that we recommended to appropriate, is higher than what people in the community will have seen in the past. Article 3 is about the Whitney Maintenance Trust Fund.
Hey James, can I interrupt you for a second, just because it's not, I don't know, on the board, so that's a $50,000. Is it just to help the people in the crowd? You're like, what are we talking about?
Yeah, thank you.
To follow along.
Article 3 is the Whitney Maintenance Trust Fund. We appropriated $3,000 this year, which is the same as what we recommended, or we're recommending appropriating $3,000. Last year it was the same amount. The General Trust Fund, we recommended $25,000, which I believe was the same as last year. And Article 5 is housekeeping, as far as I know.
Thank you. Pam, did you want to
I just wanted to give you an update on the totals that are in those trust funds, so that you're aware. So in the special education fund, currently we have $259,629. School bus fund, you have $140,353. In the maintenance trust fund, you have $93,036. Nothing was added last year to that one.
Could you repeat that number, please?
Yep, sorry. $93,036.
Thank you.
In the tuition trust fund, you have $109,551. And in the Whitney Center, you have $55,923. There is change on the end of each of those, but we'll get this sent out to you.
Yeah, this is fine. I just wanted to jump over here. And you said Whitney was about 50.
Pardon me?
You said Whitney was about 50?
Whitney is $55,923.
Thank you. Okay. All right, so that is essentially just the first look. We'll come back around to those and we'll be looking to move those forward for the March meeting. Okay, anything else on those? Jared?
Yeah, on the special ed fund, historically on all of these funds, we used to have, and we still do kind of have where we wanted them capped out at. And maybe it does, or maybe it doesn't make sense to do that on the special ed fund. This board, future boards can decide whether that's necessary or not. But just one aspect of this that I think is always important to think about is which tax years fund the capital reserve fund, and then which tax years actually get the benefit from that funding. And the point here is that we shouldn't just park money in these funds with no plan on how to use them. Because if it's 10 years later when you're actually spending the money, that's pretty far removed from the taxpayers that actually funded it. And it's just something to keep in mind when we think about how we fund these and how we use these. So that's what I really wanted to make about that.
That's a great point, thank you. All right, anyone else? James?
Well, I think Jerry makes a really good point, and I think I totally agree with you for budget items. Perhaps the school bus might be a good example where we sort of have an idea of what we like to buy, we sort of have an idea of what it costs, we sort of have an idea of how that cost fluctuates over time. It seems to me, as we talked at some length with Pam and learned more about the special ed fund in particular, we learned a couple of things that might make that an exception to your recommendation. One of the things is that, as I understand it, as consolidation has occurred in the industry, prices have increased more rapidly than elsewhere in the sector. So it's a little more difficult to predict what prices are going to be in the future. And the other thing is just that just the nature of the need, that needs aren't predictable, and they're also, in medicine we talk about needs being not elastic. In other words, if you come in on a gurney and you've had a gunshot wound, we can't budget your blood for next week. You have to have blood right away. And so the special ed fund is sort of like that. If there's a need, we have to meet that need right away. So I agree that we wouldn't want to have a lot of money sitting around and not working for the taxpayers. But in this case, looking at our particular situation right now, we felt as though it was justified to try to build up our reserves more rapidly. And I think that those reserves are gonna probably need to be used right away as well. So I don't think we're gonna have the luxury of a big balance in that fund moving forward.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to indicate that was the case with this special ed fund. If anything, I'd rather see that number bigger than that, but I think that that's a fair number to put in there for now. And that's what I mean. So the two volatile ones are the special education and the tuition funds. Those are the ones we can't predict.
Right.
I would just that to me was kind of a separate issue than the how do you use those funds. And as you said, like the school bus fund, it makes sense. It's in a 3-year schedule, so that's always going to be close to the taxpayers who fund it. It's just, I guess, my point about the special ed fund and the tuition fund is that when we have opportunities to use that money from there, as opposed to asking for it from a line item that was budgeted for something else that we're pulling from instead, maybe we should look to use the funds in the capital reserve fund before we use funds for a language arts teacher that we didn't budget for. Rather than maybe taking that money, we should be looking to take it from the capital reserve fund that we established for it in the first place.
Good point. Yeah.
I mean, one of the important things about conversations like this is it allows us to get our thinking and why we're doing things on the record, so that one, we can remember later on, and also so taxpayers can understand why we did what we did. So thank you, everyone, for your participation. Okay, let's go on to declaring the equipment surplus item, the bus.
Do you need a motion?
Yes.
Make a motion to declare an equipment surplus for the bus?
Yes, for the bus number 6, the
Bus number
2014 Bluebird 66 passenger school bus.
Second.
Was that a second, I heard?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. Any discussion? Okay, all in favor? Thank you. Thank you for your service, bus. Okay. Okay. All right, so let's move on. We still have a couple of very important things to do, and everyone's being so patient and handling things so well. So, okay, let's move on to administrator reports. Superintendent?
So I just have a couple quick things. The first thing is the policy that you just looked at and approved for first reading for the for mandated reporting. That's been updated recently. The Granite State Children's Alliance was a part of that, and they conducted the know and tell training for all of our staff throughout all of SAU 9 this past Friday. So I wanted to thank the board for voting in approval for us to have an additional half day. The training was very beneficial for everyone, and I think leaves people in a good, thoughtful place. So I want to say thank you to you for that. I have a draft SAU 9 report card for everyone. Dr. Frechette and Krista Bichet, who was just appointed as the Director of Curriculum and Instruction for SAU 9 last Thursday evening. They will be diving deep into the schools. So we felt like in looking at this, that our report card that we've been sharing with you all doesn't really show the whole story about individual student growth and achievement, or lack of growth and achievement. So presentations will be given at each school board meeting. We have on our agenda for the January meeting to do that. You guys have a lot on the agenda, so I think that your chair will work with Dr. Frechette to figure out when that will be. But it's much deeper than this draft, so that's why it's still marked draft. The next piece was about one of the items that we've been talking about a lot is SAU 9 having a voice at the legislation seat and really being more actively involved. So Dr. Frechette is a member of the North Country Superintendents group, and one of the things that they are putting together is a North Country School Summit for school board members, legislators, and superintendents. It's January 29th from 5:30 to 7:30. We really encourage you all to be there. If you decide to register, please let us know, because if 3 or more of you go, it makes your attendance a board meeting, right? You have a quorum, and we do have a plan to make that okay, but we would have to set out an agenda and post the meeting and do some work on our side. So if you can attend, we urge you to attend on Wednesday the 29th. And if you do register, the registration is in your, if you do in your agenda, if you do register, please let us know as soon as possible so that we can post the meeting.
So just 2 things on that. You'll see I added that to our group calendar in the SAU, and also their link is dead in the handout. So if there's a way to get the link, that would be great.
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Anything else, Pam? Okay.
Just,
Yes.
I'm assuming Kevin would have anyway, maybe he would have too, if she had the opportunity. The SAU 9 meeting the other night, we approved the budget for the SAU 9 at $2,401,622, which I think is about a 20% increase from the year before. And the reason for the increase to the budget was the up to 8% healthcare.
8.5.
Up to 8.5% increase in healthcare. And also, as Pam had mentioned, we did hire Krista the other night as Director of Curriculum and Professional Development. In the new budget, we included and so when the SAU 9 did that, we hired the Director of Curriculum and Professional Development in place of hiring an Assistant Superintendent. So we created the new position of Director of Curriculum and Professional Development, leaving in the position of Assistant Superintendent. The budget of $2,401,622 includes the salary for an Assistant Superintendent. Whether or not the SAU 9 board decides to actually execute that or not, the intention is we did at least budget for it so that we can start to staff these positions and hopefully give some more resources for a very stretched thin SAU 9.
Thanks, Jenny.
Okay, all right, so thank you. Ms. Messer, do you have anything you'd like to share?
I'll add a couple things from earlier today. Just that recently our third and fourth graders participated in the Martha's Memory Project with the Ski Museum. So with the other schools in the district, they were able to take the train ride to the reenactment. And they also did projects in class, which if you have them in it, they're displayed over there. So what the third and fourth graders did is that they researched the history of some Jackson ski areas, and they have a summary there. And they also made topo maps to show the elevation, the ski trails. They put so much work into it. There's a lot of cardboard cutting and really looking at the actuals. So it was a great cross-curricular activity that really encompassed math, science, social studies, history, everything. It was pretty awesome. And they're really proud of their work, which they should be. So it was a great project, not only to be able to learn more about the Valley, but more about Jackson. So those are over there if you want to take a look at them. Also, I recently had a Title IV grant approved. And the purpose of the grant is to provide like well-rounded education opportunities. And for this grant, we're going to be partnering with the Mount Washington Observatory Science Educators, which we did last year a little bit, but this grant calls for some in-school support and 2 bigger trips. One is going to be an all-school trip at the end of the year that's going to focus on looking at the different biomes on Mount Washington. I'm not going to say too much because it's going to be kind of a surprise for the kids. And also a possible winter trip with some of the older kids to look at weather on the ridgeline of Mount Washington. So we're really excited about those opportunities in addition to the other science we do in our classes and with Tin Mountain. So every month we've been trying to do some service in the community. In November, you'll see some signs out front. The students made signs for the different people in town, whether it was for the police department or the town garage, etc. This month, a couple of things we are doing is we're going caroling on Thursday to the Adult Day Center, and we did that last year. We're adding a stop this year. We're going to stop at the Gibson Center and see how that goes. So we found that was one of the best things we did last year, really giving back to the community and having the children go out there with the staff and sing. And then the students are making cards for the Friends of the Whitney, deliver baskets for people in town. So they are currently making cards for them as well. And I will, we talked about digging deeper into the data, so I'll be working with Dr. Frechette and Jess about how to present some of that more school-level data coming up, and also looking forward in January for an update on the strategic plan and how we can better present that and keep that more visible. So that's to come.
So I just want to quickly highlight Erin, because I sometimes will just send her a zippy email, like in the subject headline, something I'll think of, and I'll say, hey, what would you think about this? And she will very thoughtfully respond to me, and always follows up. So I had mentioned to her, is there a way that we could follow up on getting an update on the strategic plan so that people can see that we're moving forward? Is there a way to incorporate, a dashboard into our agendas, or what would be an easy way to just do that? So I just wanted to say thank you, because she really listens and is trying to work with lots of ideas. So you want to say something, Jared?
Yeah, the work that the students do here, I always find very fun, very exciting, and a great learning experience. I did have the opportunity to look at those before the meeting. Those are the coolest ones I've ever seen.
You wish they did it when you were.
We recycled a lot of cards.
Well, I learned a lot that I didn't know about,
Right?
about the ski areas, and the top maps are great. They're great. I love it.
That's awesome.
All right, thank you very much. Okay, so we'll move on to board member issues, committee reports. All right, and we'll start with the high school ad hoc planning committee. We just met again, and a lot of things happening. So let me start with the first item is the survey. So just a few top level highlights for you all. First of all, we were very fortunate because thanks to Allison Brand and Jennifer Cribble, that information got out fairly early and often, and we really had a wonderful response. We had about 91 respondents, and more than the number of respondents, which I think was fairly impressive by all accounts, and more than just the options that people checked off, whatever they were, it was the commentary that came in from townspeople this was a really, really wonderful exercise in civic participation. And I think as far as this whole process has gone, and really any board I've ever sat on, we got so much input that I am hopeful we will use, not just for this conversation, but to lead the board. So to that extent, I said this in the committee, but I will share it now. We left that survey open until midnight, which was my mistake because I realized as we got close that one of us needed to close it in order to make sure that it was closed and the data was locked down. So I didn't want to put that on the other committee members, so I stayed up to do that. And I noted this before, but thank you to the person who actually submitted it about 20 minutes before it closed because it made it worthwhile. So we did get great responses. They came in really just at the weekend. And one of the things we decided is we want to be very thoughtful about going through that information and presenting it in a careful and thoughtful manner. So the biggest piece of information that I think the board needs to hear is that when we looked at the numbers, a pretty overwhelming majority of folks responded that they wanted an option that included Kent and Freiburg. So there's a lot of nuance, there's a lot of discussion to be had, but that's, I think, an important question we needed to hear an answer to, because I think a lot of us were wondering if the community came back and said, stop everything, I think we would need to look at that, what's been happening. So we will be sharing raw information with folks so you can interpret it yourselves. We also will be, in January, coming back with some follow-up so people can see numbers and statistics. But we just did not want to rush into it this evening for people. But it allows us to go on to do some other things because a lot has happened basically in the last 24 to 48 hours, including some other updates. And I will pause for questions, but I want to get some of the information out to you all. So that was the survey. And I do want to just highlight that regardless of where anyone landed, it was very clear that our town feels very, very strongly that we ensure that every student in Jackson has access to excellent educational opportunities, and that we also maintain the strength and identity of our close-knit community. So I'm just going to ask everyone to think about that as we move forward in all of our work, because going back to opening this evening, we are a close-knit community, and we really are bound by a lot more in common that separates us. So hopefully we will do something good with all this information. And I just wanted to highlight that because it was really, really very lovely to read a lot of the responses, because people really thought long and hard about it, and you will get to do that all yourselves. So thank you again to the people in the committee who are working so hard to make sure that information is getting out in a thoughtful way. Other updates from the committee include Allison and I were working on an FAQ, and as we were hoping to put answers in, we realized we don't have answers yet, so we could not put them in. So the plan from the committee is that this month we will have work done on a presentation and data from the survey. We will also have that FAQ filled in as information comes in, and that again is a living document, so we're just going to keep doing that. And one big piece of it was that the survey produced some more questions, so we're going to keep updating that. Some other updates. We have confidential tuition contract correspondence from both Freiburg Academy and Conway, and I would like to share that with the board. So I am going to ask for, unless there's an objection, that we have a non-public session at the end of this evening pursuant to RSA 9183. We also have been in contact with the New Hampshire DOE, and they have said that they would approve a contract with Freiburg Academy. So with that, we also have to think about what, if any, direction we would like to give to the committee going forward. One thing I did suggest was that we've asked them to do some work now this month, so you might be able to sort of hold on that. But I did want to be thoughtful about it because committees are not meant necessarily to exist in perpetuity.
I just have a question of clarification, and this is sort of in deference to Jerry's question or his comment. So is the information that we'll discuss in non-public today, is it a contract or is it, or are they terms? Like what would be the best way to describe to the community the information that we're going to be discussing later on?
So essentially, within the last I think it was about 2 days, and one of them I think you were copied on was just today, we received contract offers with terms, very, very, very detailed terms for us to consider. And I have them from both Rybrook Academy and from the Conway School District. So I haven't even had a chance to really look through them, but I would like to share them with the board so we can make a decision about how to move forward in any direction.
Would it be helpful to read RSA 91A3 paragraph K
Sure.
to the community, just so that, because it lays out a very specific process, which I think shows transparency.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. So for those who are wondering, because this can really get confusing for folks, why I'm asking for a non-public is there are certain times when the board needs or must meet out of the public view so that we can conduct business. And 91A is a permissive statute, meaning it gives us permission to do business out of the public eye. It's not a mandate necessarily. So we have to make sure that when we are doing this, we fall under a specific statutory item. So what I'm asking for this evening and for us to make a motion is 91A is a big statute, but it's got categories. So for tonight, what we're looking at is it is consideration of, it's 91A3 2K, consideration by school board of entering into a student or pupil tuition contract authorized by RSA 194 or RSA 195A, which, if discussed in public, would likely benefit a party or parties whose interests are adverse to those of the general public or a district that is considering the contract, including any meeting between the school boards or committees thereof involved in the negotiation. To put it into terms that are maybe a little bit more simple, why we would do that is to make sure that we preserve any competitive advantage that we might want to have in a contract, because we want to make sure that the terms we are looking to negotiate are not being used by another town that might take what we're doing and run off and do something with them. So until we have a contract that's signed, we would hope to keep the terms confidential. What we have done with previous non-publics regarding this particular provision is that we have our conversation, we then generally have made a motion, we've only had, I think, one, but make a motion to seal the minutes, which means we're holding them sealed out of public view until a certain time. So we actually, in that instance, are holding them until a contract is signed. And then the public will have access to what we were doing and why we did it. So we're not looking to preserve.
So, Jess, I think that's a little bit off. You didn't read K in its entirety.
Oh, I was just sort of giving I can read the whole thing. You want me to?
Well, because at the end of K is what's so important there, as far as we actually don't sign a contract until we reveal the minutes of the non-public, which is the most important part.
Okay. All right.
So I think,
I can go find it and read it if you want, but
No, I can get it. I was just looking at it today with the New Hampshire School Board Association. Let's take the time. So,
I can paraphrase it easily.
no, if we're gonna do it, let's do it, Jerry. Let's get the exact wording if you want the whole thing. So just, if everyone's vacation for a second, we'll do that. So while I'm pulling it up, if there's anything else we'd like to.
Well, just the reason I said so, because you said that you would sign a contract and then reveal the information. The RSA says you can do it the other way. You actually have to reveal all the information before you do a contract.
Okay, so you can make a motion to seal the minutes until a specific time, depending on what happens in the minutes. So in the meeting.
If you read all of K, you'll understand what I'm talking about.
For clarity, I will just say I've read it a number of times. So we can go down this pathway, but I don't think it's in the interest of time for the public. So,
Jess, you made the statement that
Jerry,
you would sign a contract and then you would review the minutes. K says the exact opposite. That's my whole point.
Okay, my point is this. To the public and to the board, our plan is to reveal the contents of our discussions about the contract if we sign one. It is not meant to hide information from folks. Our board, I think, can agree that we plan to be transparent about everything, and we want to do that. But there are competing interests at various points in this process. So, are there any questions about that from the board?
I'd like to just paraphrase and kind of check my understanding. So my understanding is that, you know, the process has been moved forward efficiently. We now have 2 counterparties that are discussing terms with us, and that the suggestion from our chair is that the board discuss those terms tonight, and that's it. So there's no contract being signed, there's no decision being made, there's a discussion of terms that, because of the fact that those terms are currently under negotiation, should occur in private. Is that, do I have that understanding correctly?
Yes.
And personally, I don't need to hear the RSA. I think that the community needs to hear from the board that the board wants to be respectful of the community, wants to move the process forward, and wants to understand what terms we've been offered at this point.
Yeah, and actually, I think it's actually in the best interest of the board and the community for us to move on and not read it, the entire thing. If anyone is interested and wants to go over the entire statute, please come and see me. I will gladly sit with you and go over it a number of times, but I'm not going to let the meeting get derailed by reading and rereading.
Can I just ask,
So-
did you or did you not say that we would sign a contract and then reveal the contents of how we've negotiated that contract?
Jerry, I actually don't remember the order in which I said it, but I'm not going to let you stop up the meeting. Whatever order you want it to be in, for all intents and purposes for right now, I'm going to let that go.
Well, when I asked for it,
What
and I
I'm
wrote
going to
Katie
say is
Bennett
this.
entirely, because he ended it, that's so important
Jerry,
for transparency to the community.
Jerry, what I'm going to say is, we will abide by the statute. So if I put a word out of order, what I was saying was simply that the motions have been made, we will be revealing the contents of our conversations. The essence of what I'm saying agrees with what you're saying, so we don't need to keep having this conversation. If you want to take it up later, you can, but we're going to move on now. Thank you. What's next? We are on to, let's see, so.
Continuation or resolution?
Yes, so continuation or resolution of the committee. So we have the choice of,
I would just make them, I don't think
Well, I
we're
don't
ready
think
to
we do
decide.
anything. I just wanna
Yeah,
make
it's
sure,
just be a
okay.
pause and we can decide
Yes.
what we need to do, especially since the FAQ is continuing, so
yeah,
effectively continuation.
yeah, okay. So next item is the budget. Is there anything else regarding any of that? Anyone? Okay. So, next item is the budget committee. We had the presentation already, lovely and wonderful, and thank you for your time on that. We'll move on to the facilities committee. Essentially, we've covered a lot of what we covered in the facilities committee meeting, and there are minutes, of course, from these, which we just approved this evening. We will be following up with the oversight committee, and we'll be sending things to the policy committee and whatnot. So we will, unless there's anything else, Jerry, if you want to share what happened at the SAU meeting, if there's anything that's merits bringing back to us from that, highlights. Hopefully we're all reviewing the minutes. I know I am, but if you want to share anything.
No, I think we've addressed under superintendent reports, just the fact that we have passed the budget.
All right, so then we'll move on to board discussion. We have the 12/3/24 Bartlett joint meeting summary. A number of us went over to the Bartlett joint meeting, and we just want to make sure that we're following up so that, you know, there are minutes from that meeting and we're talking about things, but it was a very good meeting in that Bartlett is really open to us connecting and seeing where we can work together and collaborate on things. So their chair, Emily, and I have actually been in contact on a couple of things just in terms of seeing how can we make it easy for us to share information. And a lot of that, I think, will go through the principals, and we'll leave it up to them to do that. But we had asked for some information regarding curriculum and their organization chart, their co-curricular work, and things like that. We also asked, they have a very important reliance on their strategic plan, but some of it had not been updated, so they're going to be updating that and sharing that with us. So there'll be a number of meetings forthcoming in the spring in which they will be sharing some plans that they have on how they're going to be conducting things over there. Those of you who were at the meeting, do you want to add anything?
Yeah, thanks, Jess. You know, Jess, I think, spoke very articulately to the math curriculum that's currently being offered to Jackson middle school students in Bartlett. And I also spoke about extracurriculars and separately sports that are being offered. And I understand both of those topics are of great interest and great priority to our community. And so I just want to let the community know that those things remain on my mind. I think we really need to remain attentive to those as we work with the Bartlett board. And just, I hope our board will continue to keep those as, you know, sort of alive agenda items as we talk about collaboration with Bartlett.
Okay. All right, so beyond that, Emily and I had followed up on conversations that our respective boards had had about getting together, and she had reached out to see if we could get together perhaps on January 7th, but I think that's become moot, so I'm just going to move that. She's going to get back to us on whether we can do that or not.
But we do have a joint transportation meeting scheduled.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, great. Okay. So then we can move on to, yes?
The 14th at 10 a.m.
Okay, one of the things we're trying to do is put meetings on the agenda so that we can make sure that they're in people's minds, and then we can all try to get to them and keep them up. So I won't go through all of them, but they are on the agenda, and we're going to try to keep posting them for people. And
you should just scroll down on that screen so that those are up while people are leaving.
yeah, I do want to highlight though that our budget hearing will be January 21st, which is a Tuesday, not a Monday. And we will have our school district meeting on March 6th, which is a Thursday. And our next regular meetings will be happening on a Tuesday, which is January 21st. So the schedule will be a little bit unusual in some regards, but we'll be sending out updates hopefully so that you folks will understand and know that when and where to meet and hear what's happening with our board. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to citizen comments.
Before we do that, can I talk about the schedule?
Okay.
For the budget hearing, it's at 6 p.m. And our school district meeting is at 7 p.m. Have I looked at that properly?
There are different days.
Oh, of course. Oh, that's the district meeting, okay.
Yeah.
Budget hearing is at 6. We don't have a complete budget to offer for the budget hearing yet. We would have to have a meeting before then in order to set that, before we can have a budget hearing.
Right, I think that's in the works to be scheduled, but I'm waiting to hear back. So what would you like to do?
Well, as I said earlier at the ad hoc committee meeting, traditionally we've always had that meeting before the night of the budget hearing to complete it so that it's ready for the budget hearing. So we traditionally meet at 5:30 before, as a regular scheduled school board meeting, to finalize the budget for the budget hearing.
So we can do it on the same day?
Yeah, well, I'm just saying that's traditionally what we've done.
Are you, would you recommend that we meet at 5:30?
That's what I recommended. Again, because like, when we have meetings is up to the board. And for transparency to the public, there's some meetings that aren't as critical as others. A budget hearing for the annual district meetings is not as important meeting as it is. We should decide this evening when we're going to have a school board meeting to finalize the budget. I don't think it would be appropriate to do that outside of the public view, is what I'm saying.
I just want to be clear, I don't think anyone wants to do anything outside the public view. So just to make that clear to everyone, no one wants to do that.
I did wasn't suggesting it. I would say that the reason why we should have a meeting, a school district meeting, our regular board meeting at 5:30 is because of that. I think that's the most transparent way to do it, rather than not deciding tonight and then.
Is 5:30 enough time, half hour?
Yeah, that's fine. I'd like to be respectful of Amy also, because she was critical in making this happen. This wasn't a schedule that I put together. I was trying to work with what the SAU had, so we can ask for that.
We can do that.
Okay,
So I'd like to make a motion that we change the board meeting start time on the 21st of January to 5:30 and keep the budget hearing start time at 6 p.m. on the 21st of January.
And we can recess our meeting at 5:30 to have the budget hearing, and then go back into the meeting after the budget hearing, because there's any other business that we need to attend to that night.
That sounds good.
I'm just concerned that we won't get everything covered in a half an hour. What happens if we don't get everything covered in a half an hour?
So the work we would do in the first half hour is strictly, is only for the budget, and all other business we would do after the budget hearing.
Okay.
Because what you can't do is have the meeting begin at 5:30 and then not have an end time to it, and then sometime in that meeting have a budget hearing. The budget hearing time has to be posted. So that's why you do it that way. Yes, it's a little bit awkward, but the budget hearing time has to be posted. So we can't just have a meeting and then in that meeting have the budget hearing.
Has there ever been an instance where the meeting went longer than a half an hour prior to the?
So yes, almost every time we have a meeting, because it's never, half an hour is never enough time to do all of our business. Typically what we do is we discuss only the budget inside that half hour, get that complete, and then if we get that complete, we move on to other business. If we, inside that half hour, or we just recess the meeting until the beginning of the public hearing, and then go back into the meeting to finish the business.
Okay, so any other comments or questions on that? Motion, second.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay, so all in favor? Okay. We'll need to move the high school options meeting. Either we might be able to keep it half an hour, maybe if there are presentations or whatnot, we'll need more time. So we'll have to, I think maybe we push that back a half an hour, or we will, high school options folks, are you able to make a 4:30 meeting? No, okay.
Suggest,
Yeah.
towards it, I know when we set up this committee that we decided that it would be the hour before all of our board meetings. And for transparency's sake, that made a lot of sense, and that's been adhered to very well. There's a lot of work to be done. Do you want us to authorize you to meet prior to January 21st, so that you can conduct business as a group?
No, I mean, to be honest, I think it's working, and I think that we're all very busy, so if we can get it done in that time, I mean, even that, and what we can do is we can push it over to if there's a presentation that needs to be made, I'll add it to our agenda for the board. I mean, the fact is, it should be for the board anyway, at this point, so I think maybe we can just we'll keep it at 5, and we'll make plans, and we'll decide, and we'll set the agenda accordingly. Does that make sense to everyone?
Yes.
Okay, so we'll keep it at 5 then. All right. Did Melissa catch that, and did Pam catch that? Okay, so everyone comfortable with the scheduling? Okay, so anything else on that? All right, so let's turn to citizen comments.
Yes, hi. Jennifer Purtle. Just wanted to say I am grateful for the explanation about why you need to go into a private conversation about the contract information, and I hope that those conversations can be fruitful and thoughtful, and I just want to appreciate everything you're doing to evaluate that information for our community. So thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Do we need to make a motion to go to non-public?
Yes, we do.
Okay, I make a motion to go to non-public session, RSA 91A3.